Hello, welcome back to World News. You're here with your host Patrick and your co-host Sophie. It's been about 16 years after the Great War, and many countries in the world are still recovering from economic depressions and political problems. Today we will be focusing on the country of Ukraine, a country bordering the Soviet Union and trying to be controlled by it. Before we start, a bit of history. Russia, or the Soviet Union, always wanted to control Ukraine. Ukrainians tried to gain independence during the Russian Revolution period. After a decade of violence, the Ukrainians became part of the Soviet Union about 10 years ago in 1922.
To appease the Ukrainians, the Soviets allowed a certain amount of economic and political freedom, leading to a Ukrainian Renaissance. Independent farmers flourished, and there was a Ukrainian Renaissance. Stalin saw this flourishing of culture and arts as a threat to the newly formed Soviet Union, and deliberately wiped out all the great artists, clergymen, and educators of the time, as well as those who resisted communism. Next were the kulaks, who were gotten rid of as well. A few years ago, in roughly 1930, Ukrainian policies were reversed or replaced to enforce the Russification of the Ukrainian population, including the policy of collectivization. Collectivization wasn't really popular in the Ukraine, and when the Ukrainians did not meet the needs of the Soviet Union government, the Soviet Union started to take crop yields and block the way to get out of the country, making the Ukrainians starve.
The main people to be part of this were Joseph Stalin, the Soviet ruler who didn't like the Ukrainian culture was thriving, Vyacheslav Molotov, who was the so-called leader in enforcing the collectivization of crops in Ukraine, and troops and secret police who enforced and actively worked towards collecting Ukraine's crop yields. Since the majority of the strong politicians and people who could take action were first killed by Stalin before the famine, there weren't many people who could take action in the rebellions. Food sent by the Ukrainians' diaspora is being stopped at the border by the Soviets. And now here's a graph about the excessive debts in Ukraine. In 1932, the year before Soviets came in, there weren't that many excessive debts. It's the cyan. And in 1932, the year the Soviets did come in, there's a lot of excessive debts. And the Soviets declined that they had to do anything with this. But if you ask me, they probably did.
These are the debt tolls caused by the Soviet Union from three different perspectives. From the perspective of the Soviet Union, zero debts were caused by them. And from the perspective of Ukraine, about 6 to 7 million people have died as a result of the famine, and the United States knows that about 4.5 million people have died as a result of the famine. Now to Sweta, who will give you an exclusive access to both sides of the story.
Hi, I'm Sweta, and today I'm here at the League of Nations. We have with us here three very prestigious people: a Soviet ambassador, a Ukrainian ambassador, and a League of Nations delegate. I have a question for you guys. What are your own personal feelings and opinions about what is occurring in the Ukraine right now?
Well, I think that the Ukrainians may be exaggerating the situation just a little bit. It's not like the Soviet Union is deliberately trying to get rid of all of them on purpose. They're just a little overdramatic. It is drought season after all.
Overdramatic. Us. I'd like to hear you say the same thing if the same thing was going on in the Soviet Union today. You see, I find it very unfair that no one wants to acknowledge the real pain that us Ukrainians have to go through. These snobby Soviets pretend that they're doing nothing whatsoever. They've set a death trap in our country.
Excuse me, but why would we have any reason to do something like that? Soviet Union is obviously larger and greater country, so there's no need for us to try and dominate smaller countries like the Ukraine. Ukrainians are all just being observed, just to get the USSR into trouble with the League of Nations.
Tell me one good reason why we would have the motivation to do such a thing. I am highly offended by your accusation. You Soviets can't do anything.
Well, isn't that just splendid?
Indeed.
So, what do you think, as a proud delegate of the League of Nations, have to say about what has just occurred?
The discussion of the famine has been brought up in the League of Nations in the League Council. But the countries that are interested in relationships with the Soviet Union denied support to Ukraine. And the reasoning for that was that it was not a famine and it was a natural cause. The countries that were against the famine didn't want to support and didn't support the Soviet Union. Countries such as Germany, Ireland, and Spain that tried to help Ukraine didn't have the resources to do that. Instead, it was left to the Red Cross, and so nothing really was solved. A lot of Western nations don't even know a lot about the famine because the Soviets were able to cover it up so well.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Well, back to Sophia and Patrick for more news.
Sounds very interesting over in that area, doesn't it?
Yeah. We're not here to see you. We're here to see me. Now, here's an exclusive clip sent by the leader of the Soviet Union himself.
Even if I did cause this great famine, which I for one did not, debt solves everything. No man, no problems. All these countries keep trying to give food to the Ukraine like it was our fault. Why would they need to take such extreme measures when it's just a natural famine? This is our area of influence, so I suggest you stay out of it. These filthy peasants are subject to phony ideas. Isn't that right, peasant?
Yes, sir, Stalin.
Now we're back with our regularly scheduled programming.
No, Patrick, you'll mess something up again. Now Sweta with another interview.
Thank you, Sophia. Today we have with us here a special guest, Lana. How are you, ma'am?
Good.
Can you describe your daily life for me?
In Ukraine right now, there isn't very much food to eat, and day to day you see everyone's starving on the streets, and day to day there's always death just roaming around.
How did this all start?
It just gradually happened as people started coming in and they began taking our food, but I wasn't very sure why. I'm still not very sure why.
That is truly unfortunate to hear. Thank you for spending your time with us. Back to Patrick and Sophia for more news. Thank you.
Thank you, Sweta. This marks the end of our newscast, ladies and gentlemen.
And thank you, viewers. See you next time on World News. Hello, and welcome back to World News. You're here with your co-host Patrick. I said co-host instead of host. Patrick and your co-host Sophie. Today we are going to be Thank you, researchers. Spend your time in our research lab.
Yeah, see this green here?
You see this green? This is what I got for working on my research lab.
Hi, I'm here at the League of Nations, and today we are interviewing 3 very important people. We have with us here the Soviet delegate.
Stop!
For you guys, what are your own personal feelings, opinions? Oh my god, grammatical mistake. Okay.
Pretend that nothing is going on. They have set such a big death trap in our country.
Even if I did cause this great famine, which I for one did not, debt solves all problems. No Heema, no problems. This interruption was sponsored by Pikes Peak. The best. Stop laughing!
Shivani,
Yeah.
good.
I have a question for you. Can you describe your? No, I don't have a question. That's really.
I just quit, bro. I'm done.
Well,
You said you wanted more lines anyways. Here you go.
What? No. Okay, fine.
I quit.